What's up, it's Soul Eubanks. Welcome to the channel. I've spent about a decade working in vegan and animal rights advocacy, from nonprofit work to public education, and I recently shared this post about zoos and aquariums. It says, zoos and aquariums are animal prisons. While there was a lot of agreement from people, some of the replies brought up arguments I typically hear in support of zoos and aquariums. The main ones were conservation, education, rescue, and the idea of good zoos versus bad ones. So in this video, I want to respond to the most common pushbacks and explain why they don't actually justify captivity. So if you appreciate thoughtful conversations around animal ethics, make sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and let's get into it. One of the most common pushbacks I got was people saying zoos and aquariums preserve endangered species, but once you actually look into it, the math just ain't mathing. There's a group called Species 360. They're the biggest organization in the world that keeps track of animals living in zoos and aquariums. They keep records on over 10 million animals from about 22,000 species worldwide. A lot of the numbers people use to defend zoos and aquariums actually come from organizations just like this. So if zoos and aquariums were really about saving endangered animals, you'd expect endangered animals to make up most of their populations. But around the world, there are around over 42,000 species of animals at risk of extinction. And even though zoos and aquariums keep animals from about 22,000 species, many of those 22,000 species of animals are not endangered. Species 360 doesn't say that most zoo or aquarium animals are endangered, and that's really significant. The zoo and aquarium industry talks a lot about conservation in general, but notice how they don't lead with clear numbers that state most of their animals are endangered. So think about it like this. If drinking Coca-Cola lowered your blood pressure, they wouldn't just talk about health in vague terms. They'd actually lead with actual hard numbers. So if zoos and aquariums were mostly made up of endangered animals, we'd hear that statistic clearly and constantly, not just broad general language about conservation. And even independent research backs this up too. So a large review by Freedom for Animals found that only about 9% of animals in zoos are endangered and around 17% are at risk. And just to be clear, the same thing applies to aquariums. Most animals kept in aquariums aren't endangered either. So when you put it all together, it's pretty clear. Most zoo and aquarium animals are not endangered, even though conservation language is constantly used to defend captivity. Another argument people bring up is that zoos and aquariums are necessary because they take care of injured animals or animals that just can't survive in the wild. And yeah, sometimes zoos and aquariums do take in injured animals, but that doesn't mean zoos and aquariums as a system are necessary. Sanctuaries already exist for this exact reason. Sanctuaries take care of injured or rescued animals without turning them into attractions. They focus on safety, space, and peace, not entertainment. And that's a really big difference, because care is not the same thing as display. But the bigger issue is that people use a small number of rescue cases in zoos and aquariums to justify an entire system. Even if a zoo or an aquarium helps some injured animals, that doesn't explain breeding animals into captivity, or keeping animals in confinement for their entire lives, or using animals for entertainment. A few rescue stories don't justify a system that keeps hundreds of thousands of animals confined. And something people don't talk about much is that there's no strong public information showing what percentage of zoo or aquarium animals arrive injured. We just don't know what that is. What we do know is that most animals in zoos and aquariums are born in captivity or moved from one zoo or aquarium into another, not rescued from the wild because they were hurt. So the idea that these places are mostly filled with injured animals just isn't supported. Zoos aren't hospitals, aquariums aren't hospitals either. A cage or a tank doesn't magically turn captivity into care, and care doesn't require an audience. And on top of that, most zoo and aquarium animals are never released back into the wild anyway, because they were bred or raised in captivity. So when people say zoos and aquariums are necessary because of injured animals, they're pointing to a small exception and using it to defend a much bigger system. Another argument that popped up in the comments on this post is that zoos and aquariums educate people and raise awareness. And education is important and it matters, but education does not require animals to be in captivity. People learn a lot about animals through documentaries, sanctuaries, nature films, and seeing animals in their natural environment. None of that requires cages or tanks. Watching animals in captivity doesn't teach us what they need. It teaches us what confinement looks like. If conservation were really the goal, animals wouldn't need to be on display. Real conservation looks like protecting natural habitats, supporting sanctuaries, and stopping poaching, not placing animals in cages and tanks. Whether it's a cage on land or a tank in a building, the lesson is the same. Animals in zoos and aquariums exist where we put them, not where they chose to be. Another comment that popped up a lot was people saying calling zoos and aquariums animal prisons is offensive because humans commit crimes and animals don't, but that's actually kind of the point. Animals didn't do anything wrong. They didn't break any rules, they didn't break any laws, and they're still locked up. Captivity is about control, and controlling bodies isn't something that only happens to humans. Zoos hold animals in captivity and control where they go. They control when they eat, who they interact with, and who gets to watch them. Aquariums do the same thing, just underwater. And throughout history, we've also seen humans put on display for exhibition too. In the late 1800s and in the early 1900s, Black people were literally put on display for entertainment and so-called education. One well-known example of this is Saartjie Baartman. She was a woman from South Africa who was exhibited in Europe because of her body, specifically because of her large hips and her large legs. After her death, her body was dissected and parts of her remained on display in museums for decades without consent. Another example of someone who was put on display was Otu Benga. He was a man from the Congo who was displayed inside the Bronx Zoo in 1906 to support racist ideas about evolution and hierarchy. Neither of them committed crimes. Neither of them were being punished. They were displayed because people in power believed they had the right to confine them, to control them, and to exhibit them. Now, this comparison isn't saying animals and humans are the same. I'm just recognizing how our society has a history of forcing bodies to be on display, and neither of them are justified. Another response I saw in the comments was people saying farms and circuses are worse than zoos and aquariums, but I think one thing we shouldn't forget is that multiple harms can exist at the same time. Just because something worse exists doesn't make zoos and aquariums completely harmless. So thinking critically about zoos and aquariums is important because they both normalize captivity. They make confinement real, they make it educational, family friendly, and ethical, and even compassionate, quote unquote. Zoos and aquariums are often the first places kids learn how to relate to animals. And what they're being taught, even if it's unintentionally, is that it's normal to confine animals and control their lives for our benefit. So once captivity feels normal in one place, it becomes easier to accept it everywhere else. At the end of the day, this conversation isn't solely about zoos and aquariums. It's really about how we justify control over animals when that control benefits us. A lot of these arguments sound compassionate, but they're really built on the idea that animals exist for our use or our entertainment. If there were data showing most zoo and aquarium animals are endangered or rescued, that statistic would be central to the industry's messaging, but it just isn't. And my goal here wasn't to win an argument, it was to get people to question systems we've been taught to accept without thinking. Hopefully this video gave you a clearer picture of why zoos and aquariums function as systems of confinement, and why our time, our money, our energy are better spent supporting sanctuaries, anti-poaching efforts, and protecting animals in the wild where they actually belong. So thanks for watching this video. If you've enjoyed it, hit the like button, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and I'll see y'all on the next one.